How's it? I'm Honan,
I'm Oliver.
and this is Kpop Podcast, episode 6. And right away, the first topic that we're going to jump into today is shipping slash fan fiction.
Yes, don't say slash fan fiction because that means something on its own.
Does it? Oh,
Yeah,
no.
yeah. Slash fiction is the real.
Well, that should help
spicy one.
people understand how little I actually know about fan fiction. I'll let you take this one away first because I don't even know where to start.
Well, yeah. So I should preface by saying that I'm not exactly well versed in this field either. But I guess I'll start talking about it in terms of some news that broke about a week ago, which is that Hybe has entered into writing original material, like producing its own original. I guess is it even fan fiction if the company itself is producing it? I'm not sure, but onto Wattpad, which is like the biggest site for fan fiction and stuff. So they're producing original content involving BTS and Hypen and TXT and so on. Which is interesting in its own right, because I actually remember seeing about a month ago a job listing at Hybe for someone who was like going to create storylines or something along those lines, and they wanted someone who was like a published novelist. Like that was the requirement. They said you have to have published at least one novel or something like that. But I think that probably shows how big a market it is that they're exploring this. And it definitely is a big thing that a lot of people, there is a section of the K-pop community that is the fan fiction section, which is of course different from the shipping section. I think shipping is a much wider thing than
Yeah,
than
you
the actual
definitely
fan
see it
fiction,
more
but
often, I would say.
yeah, but it's definitely something that apparently companies are considering tapping into. And I don't know how I don't really know how I feel about that. I think perhaps on the one hand, it's better if the companies are the ones producing the content, because then it prevents it from being
Yeah.
uncomfortable for the artists, shall we say? Because I think it's definitely a thing that when something is popular on social media or whatever, there is a chance that the artists will see it.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what that must be like to read, especially the spicier ones. But at the same time, I do think when it's done innocently, it's quite an important thing to fans that they might feel like they're having taken away from them by the power of capitalism. So I don't really know what my conclusion is on it yet.
Yeah, like it is a weird thing because it is like, oh, okay, it is called fan fiction. Like, should it not be done by the fans? But then it's also like, I don't want something super weird, written about me or whatever like that. So I can imagine from the artist's point of view that they're like, I don't want to go on the internet and find some really weird stuff like that or whatever. So then the company, like you're saying, if the company's making it, at least then there's like a control of how wild that stuff is getting.
Yeah, and I guess then there's an added thing of like where if anywhere should a line be drawn on what fans produce, and when it comes to that kind of content. Because obviously fans can make any kind of content they want, right, and upload it to any kind of medium. It doesn't have to just be the form of writing stories, right? Like there's also producing YouTube videos and things like that, making edited photos and stuff like that, which I think a lot of the time it kind of starts off looking like just innocent, good fun, and then you realize how things can be quite sinister, especially when it comes to editing pictures and stuff that people might start believing are genuine and not edited and things like that. But there is no regulatory body to decide where that line should fall. It's kind of moderated exclusively just by the response that they get from fans, and I think fans tend to separate quite a lot between the people who like fan fiction and people who don't, and there's not much interplay at all. Like, I'm not interested in it, so I don't read it.
Yeah.
Occasionally I'll see it pop up and I don't follow it, you know?
Yeah, it's definitely not something I think you casually are like, oh, I think I'll go read some fan fiction or something, you know? Like, I think you're either, like you're saying, like really into it, or it's just kind of like doesn't exist on like your radar really as like a thing to read. But I was gonna say the thing like you were talking about where someone kind of might make it out of like good fun or something, you know, I think that happens probably a lot, and then someone actually believes it, like you're saying, you know, like someone probably just jokingly makes one or something, or edits something in a certain way just thinking, ha, that's funny or whatever, and then someone really is like, oh yeah, that's real or something, you know, like really believes it, and it's like, come on dude, it's clearly like it's clearly a photoshopped like edit of something.
Yeah. And I guess some of this will kind of fall under an eventual topic we'll do, which will be queer baiting, which is the idea of groups themselves playing up to the idea of fans perceiving them as gay or whatever, and that being something that lures fans in. And I think when you add fan fiction and so on to this narrative, then that kind of plays into that more. Maybe it's very cynical to think that perhaps some smaller companies might deliberately try to play up to this. They might be aware of that kind of following that can come, and then they deliberately try to bring in that fan base by playing up to it.
Yeah, because those montage videos are really popular on YouTube, those kind of like that style video when they do that. I could definitely see like it's hard to think if like a company plays into it or something, like tells the group to play up to it more. I mean, because there's some groups you would think, you wonder how close, you know, can everyone in a group really be that close to each other across all the groups, you know? They all have that close and good of a relationship with each other, because I have to feel like some, even though there's like a public persona that they have, I feel like some definitely have to not have like perfect friendly relationships. There's definitely working relationships in some of these groups versus like everyone being friends. I feel like there's no way across the board that they're all just great friends in every group in K-pop.
I mean, I know for a fact from having spoken to someone who works as a manager of a K-pop group that from I won't name company names or group names or anything, that they've seen different groups have different relationships within them. Some it's more like different, like several cliques of friends who are close with each other, but then across each group they're more just like acquaintances, because ultimately that's what they are. They're colleagues. And of course when you're living together in such close quarters and everything, you do form very close bonds more easily, so it's not unbelievable, but certainly a lot of the time it does happen like that. And I guess that is probably a good way to segue into shipping, because I don't feel like it's necessarily impossible, though I would have to say it's probably extremely rare that there could be some intercompany or even intergroup, well, intercompany definitely, but intergroup romantic relationships are a possibility, right?
Of course.
When you're in that close proximity and so on. And we've talked before, when we talked about dating and family life and stuff, that you can't have that many good-looking people in close proximity to each other and expect something to not find its way into something else. Right?
Yeah.
So it's definitely a possibility, but the way that fans like to play it up is like, oh, when you get introduced to groups nowadays, it seems like someone goes, oh, here's the key ships in each group, and it's like it stops being just a kind of fun thing of like, oh, these two are especially close and it's funny or whatever, and it starts seeming like people sincerely believe that there is always something going on between them and stuff.
It gets such a massive fan base. I know I've seen a lot with Twice, Mina and Chaeyoung, right?
Yeah.
And I like I notice any like Twice video thing that has like an interaction between them is like instantaneously like the ship of those two or whatever. Like people will always be like, oh, the ship's sailing or whatever. Of like, it's like it's kind of funny. Like I can find it funny most of the time, but then you start to wonder because it's so massive of the amount of people who are like into that ship that they call it. I guess it's right, and then it's like it becomes flooded in the comment section. Like someone in there probably really believes that they are that way with each other. Like,
and you have to wonder as well again what, especially with a group like Twice, where perhaps the interaction that they have with their fans is less, just because there's such a high volume of fan traffic. But when something is that popular and there's so many YouTube videos about it that start trending, you have to imagine that they do come across it. Yeah. Right. And then think, well, I hope that they're not sitting there thinking, feeling insecure of like, oh, but when we just do something that's just like a friendly thing that we always do, how people are going to perceive it and play up to this thing. But then perhaps they're going, oh yeah, we'll do this in order to make people make videos and like and trick them. And maybe they laugh about it. Like that's possible too. And I think both of those are, that's a fine outcome to have. But obviously if they're sitting there feeling insecure about it and not liking it, then it's a shame really that no one really often comes out and says anything about it. Like I've only seen a couple incidents, I can't remember where the idol themselves has come out and said, guys, this is kind of creepy, could you stop?
Yeah. Well, you have to wonder if they're worried that a lot of their popularity stems to that kind of shipping relationship that people believe they have, or whatever. You have to wonder if they worry like, oh, well, there's so many videos about this and like it has such popularity on YouTube and everything, that they're worried like, well, if I tell them to stop it, I don't enjoy that, then there's a lot less content of me on YouTube or something. Like
I guess
like if they worry about it.
And I do wonder if companies ever have official standpoints on that. If the company says, as long as they're not doing anything that's directly putting you in danger, then just let them do whatever, because it counts as publicity and fame and thus revenue for us. Yeah, that's quite a cynical way of looking at things, and maybe they're much more oblivious of it than you'd think, which would be nice, I suppose. But yeah, it's just a tricky one, because on the one hand there are some very like simple and sweet kind of shipping things which don't have any real connotations to them, where the idols themselves know about it and play into it. So we'll make a check for talking about nature in this episode. So I remember referring to Lou and Sohee as Luhi, for example, as a ship name, because they're both kind of like the parents of the group. They're like the group's moms, basically, and they are very close with each other. And they themselves, like, I remember I've commented on stuff they've said, and they've replied like Luhi forever and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So they clearly know about it and play up to it, but it's just a bit of fun, right? There's no real sincere like they're actually dating, oh my god, kind of stuff around it, which I feel like is the right spot for something like that to be in, especially where the idols themselves have acknowledged it and shown that they are quite happy about it, and they're not.
Yeah, I've seen healthy like comments of shipping, where it's just like, oh, like people just love the interaction of those particular idols with each other or something, which is like totally, yeah, of course, that's great. You love like the chemistry of interaction they have is funny or enjoyable to watch, versus someone just being like they're secretly dating or something, But then like when we were saying earlier, like how we thought you wonder if they like play into it, like Mina, Cheon, and like Solar Moonbyul, I definitely feel like those are like, I feel like I've seen them like play into it. You know what I mean? Like you can tell that they kind of probably know about it, like the way that they keep the interactions going, it seems like, through every like comeback or release or something that's happening. But you have to wonder if they just really are that great of friends, and then everyone's just kind of going over the top with that, you know.
Yeah, and obviously some idols have personalities that match like that, right? And in Korea, skinship is such a common thing. Like the people you're really close with, you do see close friends like being very like physical with each other and stuff, and it's not weird. It's just the way it is.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I guess there are also some cases on the other side of that where you do think, I don't know, maybe that it does seem like something could be going on there. I think, well, I have my own theories about some of them, like in Dreamcatcher, for example. I think Dreamcatcher are probably one of those groups where there's some of the wildest interactions between members, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, well, I mean, yeah, there might be something going on there, but often I think, well, actually, my theory about Dreamcatcher, I guess this kind of veers into other topics territory, but I'll touch on it. Is that I've often thought that that one of the members might legitimately be gay, and she's come out to the other members, and the other members want her to feel more comfortable. That is something along those lines. I won't like go into who's who, but I'm sure most people can get. Because statistically, you can't have this many idol groups and have everyone be straight, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there has in one of the groups across somewhere, it has to be the case. You know what I mean? Because like you're saying, it's statistically pretty much impossible for it not to be the case.
And it sucked when member idols have had relationships become public, and the idols who were formerly shipped with another member or someone, and then there's a flood of comments being like, oh, so and so is going to be disappointed, or oh, they're just pretending that they're straight or something like that. And that's where it kind of gets into the territory of just like, come on, guys, like
yeah, you should, when someone comments assuming like someone's sexuality all the time in the comments, you have to wonder how that feels for that idol. They see it, you know, they're like everyone's assuming my sexuality constantly on everything that I'm in on YouTube.
It's like, or projecting their own sexuality onto someone that they don't know. Which, it is
interesting because you see it a lot. I've noticed with Sana, not to keep bringing up Twice members, it's just I think these are the ones I've seen the most, like, of shipping and compilation, like things like that, you know. I've noticed Sana's like a one where they always say a lot like, oh, Sana's feeling up all the members or whatever, you know, she must like be secretly like gay all the time is what they say, like in the comments or whatever. But it's like, I don't know Sana, so I can't assume, you know, what her sexuality is. So it's like, I think it's wrong to assume.
The whole meme based on the Heart Shaker lyrics, right? It's Sana gay.
I've seen when Nyan sings that part, and then
So, and I think the members are aware of that because I think they've deliberately altered their pronunciation of those lyrics in order to like propel that. And again, it comes back to is the company telling them to do that, or are they doing it just in order to stir shit? Because possibly. But
you have to wonder if Nyan just straight up before has sang it exactly.
Honestly, like, I wouldn't put it past Nyan at all. Like, it's exactly the kind of thing that she would do. And Nyan is one of the biggest like basing, like she's constantly saying like, making jokes like, oh, like me and Sana are dating, I'll leave it up to your imagination once and stuff like that. And it's just like, girl, come on.
So she is just enjoying that side of it, like messing around with everyone all the time.
But, I mean, as long as Sana is as well, then it's fine, right? That's the important thing, and I guess that's more or less that. But I guess I think just people have to also, I think, remember to be respectful when people don't like the idea of shipping. Because I've seen cases of people getting into groups and then someone being like, oh, like, who do you ship, or what's your favorite ship, and then being like, I don't really ship them, and then they're being like, what the hell, you're not a fan. Like, obviously that's a rare thing, fortunately, and that's something I've only seen within Army. But I'm sure it does happen elsewhere too. So yeah, I think as long as people just, it can be your thing and you can express your fandom as whichever way you like, so long as you're not hurting anyone.
Yeah, like I think it's totally healthy to be a big fan of particular idols in the group you like interacting with each other. You really enjoy their interactions that they have, particular two members, and that's healthy. Like, that's totally fine. I think when it does get to assuming their sexuality, assuming that they have secret relationships with each other, and so that's when it starts to get a little, it's a little uncomfortable now or something, you know. Like, because it's not, I personally don't feel affected by it, but I wonder, you have to wonder how the idol feels affected by it when they come across it, you know. That's the big worry about it.
And it could really go both ways, like sexuality, because because like, what if an idol who everyone suspects is gay is actually gay, and they are now more afraid of coming out because of it?
Yeah.
Right. Or like, what if it's the opposite? What if the opposite is true? Or equally, what if there's a heterosexual interest at a company that a lot of people ship together, and they genuinely like each other, but now they feel like they can't because of all the public attention.
Yeah, they can't interact because of all the shipping
on every move, right? And
you see that a lot. The one boy group and another girl group. It's like they saw each other for 5 seconds at a mama performance or something, you know, and they're like, they are dating or whatever. Yeah. It's like, what? They stared at each other from one chair to the other.
And you've seen like how older performances at Mama and stuff like that, how much more into it everyone could be, how much more expressive they could be. Whereas now it's like, if they're showing a particular amount of affection for a song or a group, then stories will get written. And I think in many ways that can be detrimental to the industry, or the well-being of people, because if you're doing 20 shows at the end of the year, you have to sit there like emotionless the whole time. It'd be soul destroying.
Yeah.
No wonder you can see idols looking like they wish they were at home when you see that instead. Whereas 5-10 years ago, you would see people having a much more enjoyable time.
Yes, let idols enjoy the many award shows that they have to attend with each other.
Yeah. And ultimately, we all have to bear in mind that there's so much stuff that we'll never know that goes on. I don't think we'll ever know what really went on between Jimin and Jonghyun, for example.
Yeah.
Maybe in 50 years, one of them will write a tell memoir about it.
Yeah, someone who was in an idol group that got to see everything behind the scenes will write something about it all.
And like, it's not a very well kept secret. I mean, the identities of who and who is, but like, everyone knows that there are plenty of idols who are doing each other in some in more committed fashions than others. And like, other idols who would go out on the town and whatever, and idols may choose to frequent certain types of establishment more than others, and so on.
I remember seeing a video of is it M Black? Is that how you say it?
Mm-hmm.
A member from that group, when he was talking about how like they use the the thing where they do all the Olympic style sports together or whatever. I think he was saying something like they would use that to have someone like pass notes to the other person that they were trying to date. Like, that's how the idols would end up trying to interdate each other, kind of thing. Like, oh yeah, you take the note over to that other idol, let them know. Like, it's like...
Yeah. There's also the Inkigayo sandwich as well. the famous Inkigayo sandwich.
With the Inkigayo sandwich,
which it's a type of sandwich that's quite popular over here in Korea. Anyway, it's like it's crab meat and jam, which you wouldn't necessarily think would go together, but it actually, I mean, Koreans love sweet stuff, right? Everything savory here has got some sweetness to it, but it actually works quite well. I can't eat too many of them, but like it works all right. But yeah, there was a whole thing of like getting a phone number on a slip inside the sandwich wrapper or something like that.
And that's creative ways of doing it, since you have to be kind of really secretive about trying to date each other in the idol world. That is a creative way of doing it.
Yeah. And obviously it kind of ties together with the general thing about the perception of idols dating and stuff that in time will hopefully continue to decrease, like we talked about, and idols will feel more comfortable talking about their relationships and stuff. And hopefully at some point idols will start feeling more comfortable with coming out, if they have a sexuality to come out about. But I think that future is still going to be some time away. Like we have had a couple of kind of K-pop adjacent people come out, but not really any of the main ones. And there's certainly people in there that you're just like, oh, come on. Come on, dude. Like we all know, like, but obviously they know about how much that could hurt their career.
Yeah.
So
I feel like that's still a little bit ways out, like you're saying, just because I've seen just in the small amount of time how slow it's gradually gotten okay with the idol dating stuff.
Yeah.
Just very, very slow. It's like a snail kind of just going along, so far with the speed of everything.
It will be very interesting if Dispatch does happen to get hold of a same-sex couple at some point, or how that would go down. I kind of hope that it doesn't happen like that. I do hope it happens on their own terms if it does happen.
That's like the version of TMZ kind of thing over there, like where it's just like, this is what's like,
yeah, it is tabloid journalism, but it does. They usually are right about things. That's the thing. Then they don't They do sensationalize, but they don't make stuff up really anymore much.
They sensationalize the truth or whatever.
Yeah.
I guess,
Yeah. They won't print something unless they're coming out with receipts, right? That was the funny thing with Momo Hichul, because I think Dispatch knew about it, but they didn't have any hard proof, so they kind of teased that they had someone, because they have a tradition of revealing a couple every January 1st, right? It's a whole thing that they do. But they didn't have any proof. They couldn't physically show them together. And like they said, we know one of you were famous, and they like kind of teased at it. And then in response, they just went Label SJ and JYP just went public with it to like beat them at their own game kind of thing.
You wonder if they get like an insider who tells them.
Yeah.
That's probably got to be the way to do it. Or I was wondering if like maybe Momo and Hichul are seen on a date at a particular place, it's someone who saw that. Yeah, it's got to be a mix of all of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they do have paparazzi who will follow people. That's how Jiho and Kang Daniel were caught. For example, someone followed Jiho as she drove to Kang Daniel's place or whatever.
So she's just getting followed around while living her life. It's so crazy.
I mean, it's like any celebrities in the West, right? You have to deal with paparazzi all the time.
Leo's dad bod on the beach all the time.
yeah. But there's also insiders from companies and from especially broadcasters, because people who work backstage at SBS or whatever don't get paid very well, and they don't have much loyalty to anyone. So if they can see the opportunity to make a few extra bucks from selling a story, then they'll do that. Yeah. And sometimes it gets quite damaging, and this, I guess, is a way we can kind of swing back on topics. So, like, there's been cases of someone who just like went to a dressing room. It was Nancy from Momoland's dressing room, just like opened the door while she was changing, took a picture, and like went and tried and sold that to the media.
What?
And
that's fucking wow. Wait, so someone just was able to get in there and then take a photo of her?
Yeah, I mean, if you work backstage, you can just, and you have permission to be in that area, then obviously you can, like, you know, if your job is to stand by idols or whatever, your job is to knock on the door and say 5 minutes or whatever, and sometimes you have to go in. Like, you can have permission to do that. It's very, it's chaotic.
That's so messed up. Someone would do that.
Yeah. Well, and then the thing is, it's when it goes into the because Nancy's still really young, right? And she's like, and legally an adult at least, but like there's certainly a time when she was active when she wasn't. Mm-hmm. And that's I think where you see fan fictions and stuff about idols who are still minors, and that that kind of stuff is where it gets really messed up. So that's the stuff that I where I go, this is not ever okay. I don't really, and even if it's not explicit, if there's even just like the implication or whatever is still like no, let's
unlike some of the other stuff, that's literally a crime. So like that's literally like an actual crime that you can get arrested for. Like, let me just open the door, snap, like that's completely illegal. Like, I'm surprised, did they ever catch whoever did that?
I actually don't know what happened. I think they must have. But,
yeah, there has. I'm sure by now it's got to be settled or something.
Yeah.
Just to kind of finish off this topic, when we were talking about Momo Hichul, I've seen, even though they're not together anymore, I've seen a lot of when someone is shipping in like a comment, and then someone gets mad about the shipping in said comment, then someone goes, but we were right about like Momo and Hichul, so how maybe we're right about this one or something, it's like, so they use it as like, but we were right about that one or whatever kind of thing. So yeah, I think sometimes like people being right about the shipping situation that they made makes them think, oh well, I must be right about this one, so I'm gonna keep doing it or whatever.
Yeah, I guess that one was a bit more obvious because Hichul was so open about how much he liked Momo for a while. Right, so it's that was more kind of like a little fairy tale coming true in a way, but rather than like an oh my god, this came out of nowhere type thing. I mean, it was still very surprising when it happened, but yeah, it wasn't apropos of nothing, but it's yeah, it would be. I think if any other kind of, or a significant number of like posited relationships that people ship end up emerging as true, then perhaps they will start using that as a more ammunition for there'll be some kind of like K-pop ship fortune teller that like everyone subscribes to.
Someone predicts all of them or whatever.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised. It'll be like I don't know if you've ever seen South Park. There's like the dolphin that pushes the balls that fall through the machine, and then it picks like the Super Bowl winner every time or whatever. There'll be like the little dolphin that's picking all the ships.
Just be like thousands of balls with idols' names on it, and
they're like, see, I told you, and picked them.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was good for shipping and fan fiction. You guys could let us know anything you feel we didn't cover in those two topics, but please do not drop your favorite fan fictions in the comments below.
Especially if it's about us.
Yes, please don't. No. I can just imagine how wild some people's imaginations get. Topic 2. Subunits. This another thing, I'm just gonna let you take it away. I have takes on my favorite subunit ever and stuff like that, but you can kind of explain a little bit about subunits, I guess.
Yeah, like, well, I guess so. Subunits are kind of, they're much more unique, I feel, to well, not just to K-pop. I mean, it happens in J-pop or whatever as well, but it's something that in the West we don't really see so much, right? I think whenever you have a case of a group in which suddenly some members aren't involved, the immediate assumption is there's drama. They're leaving. It's falling apart. It's over. In terms of like pop groups, anyway. I mean, like in metal and rock and stuff, you have bands where you have members that change, right?
Well, yeah, no one calls Stone Sour like a Slipknot subunit because there's 2 Slipknot members in it or something.
Right. And I guess you have like sometimes you will have musicians who are in multiple bands, but they're never really considered to be connected. They're associated at best, right? And like the same thing, it's like you don't have really. I would say you have different iterations of like the 4 or whatever, just whoever Marky Smith had gotten together at that particular point to play with him, right? It's perceived in different ways. Where in K-pop it's so much it's almost like expected that at some point over a group's career they'll have a unit release. Though I do feel like it's less common now. We don't really see subunits so much anymore. Like, we certainly see comebacks and promotions where a member or more might be not around, might be, you know, on hiatus or whatever.
Yeah.
But it's not considered a subunit or anything like that. It's but having like out and out subunits like we've had in the past with like Girls' Generation TTS or Sistar 19 or TRN4 and stuff like that, that's not really as popular anymore. And I do wonder if it is because there might be that increase of media attention from fans who are going, oh my god, something's happening, there's some kind of drama going on. You know,
there's a lot of drama to the solo releases of like Blackpink members. Like I remember as Jennie had hers kind of like right away, and then there was that long wait, you know, until Rosé happened, and then I feel like Lisa came pretty quickly after Rosé.
In comparison, yeah.
So it felt like Rosé had this really long, which from what I've seen, could have been a lot to do with her too, because I watched her Knowing Brothers episode, and where her friend from what group it was, I can't remember. Hiri, I think is her name. Girls' Day, yeah. Was saying like she's such a perfectionist. I kept telling her it was ready, it was done to release, but she wouldn't release it. So that sounds like Rosé had a lot of like, I don't want to release it yet. So it kept like stacking and waiting for it to be released.
I do wonder how much of that is a kind of press cover thing. And Hiri was like, "Hey, I got you. I know that people have been giving you flack about it. So I got you."
She's like, "I got your back. I'm your home. Yeah. let me take care of this."
Hiri's a real one, so I can see that. But well, I think the reason why there was a lot of issues with Blackpink Swans was because back when, before Jennie's came out, they had that statement from the company where they were like, so the plan is we're going to release 4 solos, one for each member, and then we're going to have a full album. And then it was like we had 1 solo, and then it was just like very quiet. And then we had an EP, and then it was very quiet, and then we had the album, and then it was very quiet. So it didn't happen as they said it was going to happen. Which, you know, it's YG, shocker.
Yeah. But they always have the jokes about them being in the dungeon or whatever I've seen. I've wanted to ask you about, because they're not subunits obviously, but is it unique kind of to Blackpink and BTS? They kind of have that formula of like, our members have solo releases and then we have group releases, whereas other groups it's like we have group releases and subunit releases. Like Twice, for instance, seemed to on this new album be like group then 3 subunit song kind of things released.
Well, okay. So that the Twice thing I think is an important distinction to make. So unit songs on an album is not the same as a subunit.
As a subunit, release. Okay.
In order to be a subunit release, it would have to be a separately promoted thing just by those members,
like the WJSN the Black kind of thing, right? Okay,
yes, exactly. Yeah, like the WJSN the Black or Chokome, respectively. So yeah, so that's different. I think it's not unique to BTS and Blackpink, but I think they can do it more because they're the biggest groups in the world.
Yeah.
Right. They have the freedom to do whatever they want. And I think that each one of them, I think especially in BTS, they have very particular tastes.
Yeah.
And styles that they want to do, right? Like if they want to release a particular type of song, then they will. And I think by now each member has shown their own particular colors and people will hire them. So a lot of the time it's OSTs, right? Like you personally know about V's OST because you did a cover of it.
Yeah.
But it's like if you're an OST, yeah, I'll give you the plug, don't worry. If you're someone who's looking to cast artists for an OST for your drama, and you know the kind of voice that V has and the style that he's suited to, then you might want to cast him. But perhaps if you want a different style and you might prefer a type like what Jin has done recently, for example, then you go for him instead. And I think they're more than willing to do it because they're very much in a position where they can decide their own progress, right?
Yeah.
but that does still happen across other groups too. Um, so like you have, for example, Elris, shouts out. One of their members just released an OST as a solo, and they haven't had a comeback in 2 years.
Oh, damn. That's a.
So
I thought Nature had a long wait period for us. Holy shit.
yeah, it's been a while since Jackpot. And the member who released the solo got added for that comeback, and so she's only been able to participate in one release. So perhaps there is an element of like, oh, I want to do something, you know, I want to be featured.
Yeah.
But no, I wouldn't say it's uncommon for artists to have solo or even duo releases as stuff like OSTs and things like that. But it's certainly distinct from a subunit where you have a full release, a full promotion schedule, usually a physical release and so on.
I can appreciate subunit releases a lot more now than I think initially I could when first started checking out K-pop, because now like WJSN The Black, I really enjoyed that release that they had. I don't know why the song name's blanking on me, but it was one of my favorites that we had checked out on the lives. But not only that, is it Easy?
Easy, yeah.
Okay, yeah, Easy. I love that song. So that I can really appreciate subunits from that point of view, where it's like, okay, this is a really dope song. But then you wonder, would I have liked it more if it was the whole group, or do I really like it because it's the subunit? Like Monster is another good case with Solgi and Irene. I love Monster, but it's like, would I love it even more if it was all Red Velvet doing that song? You know, it's kind of it has an interesting dynamic to it like that, where you wonder.
Well, I think that's probably what makes it, what makes them so good, right? Is because I don't feel like that, in the case of The Black, I don't think that song would have existed were it not for that subunit. And if it did, I don't believe it would have gone to WJSN as a whole group.
Yeah.
As great as WJSN's music is, I don't necessarily think that they would do, or that the company would want them to do, that kind of song, but instead picking out the like sexiest members and giving them the sexy song, and then at the same time having formed Chokame out of the cutest members, whether willingly cute or unwillingly cute, in the case of Dayoung and Yoram, and then giving them a song like Humph, that like it perfectly matched the two respective colors of that when coming together as the whole of WJSN plus the other four, it's or however many are still around. There should be other 5, but there's only 2, you know, whatever. Then it's maybe those colors don't shine through as much because you want to make the song is going to appeal to like be more well-rounded, right? And Unnatural wasn't cute and wasn't sexy, right? I mean, it was a great song, but it's different, right? Different style, right?
Yeah, there's some members who might not fit the theme in the whole group, like you're saying, so it wouldn't necessarily work as a whole group.
Yeah, and I feel like the same way. I feel like Monster and Naughty and their other songs on that album wouldn't exist if it was all of Red Velvet. It would be different songs.
Yeah,
right? So
I try to imagine like Joy and Windy in Monster and stuff, and visually definitely like you can see it happen, but maybe vocal tone wise it just works so well because it's Solgi and Irene's kind of tone.
Yeah,
the whole time.
Ultimately those songs were made for them, right? It's that's how it goes. But yeah, well, maybe in that kind of concept, I could see Joy.
I'm just a big Joy Red Velvet
I know.
fan,
I think
I just want Joy and Monster and Naughty.
Yeah,
I think that's what it is. That's what it stems down to.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, I get it, and it is interesting, and I think it's really cool when you do see a whole group then performing a song that wasn't by the whole group initially. Right, like that's always a neat thing. Like in various forms that's happened, like for Blackpink solos, for example, there was that award show performance where all the other members came out as part of the solo performance as like the dancers.
I have seen that,
stuff
actually,
like that. Even just seeing all 9 of Nature performing Girls, if you can consider that a unit release, which I suppose you can in a way. that sort of thing. So yeah, I personally always think that subunits are a neat kind of aside, but what gets to me is when a subunit release is kind of in place of a full group comeback, and then we're left waiting a long time to see the other members. So for WJSN, for example, the subunits came out in pretty quick succession of each other, and both kind of a good, fairly quickly after Unnatural release, because Unnatural released at the start of the year, and then there was the Chocomay release, and then the Black release. And I was thinking, great, if then we have another full group release before the end of the year, then that's a really solid year, right? Like two full group releases, two subunit releases. It doesn't feel like the other two who weren't involved in either unit, not mentioning the Chinese members here again, were left out. But now it's November and we haven't had the full group release since January, so it's kind of like, they are being left out.
And so why wouldn't you'd have to wonder why they don't use the momentum of the subunit releases to carry into a full group release? Like you have to that you think that would be the plan that they have.
Yeah, so for Red Velvet, for Irene and Silgi, I mean it made sense given the situation that they were going through, and with Wendy not being available due to her injuries and stuff, it made sense. That was the perfect time to do a unit release. Joy was doing her acting stuff, Yuri was doing her show and whatnot, and of course Joy would then follow up with her own solo album just like Wendy would. So it makes sense to work like that, right? It's like we can't have the full group come back for a while, so let's get something out because we went a whole year without anything. Right? So that I understand, but it's it would make more sense if they followed up. And from what I'm hearing, the word on the grapevine for WJSN anyway is that they're more likely to get another Chocomay unit release.
Someone's like, we need that cute content coming in. We need our
orange caramel style.
I enjoy that. I love that orange caramel trot like style thing. Yeah, it's so good. And
they performed it on stage with a bunch of like different comedians and stuff. Like they had Yongchul from Knowing Bros came out on stage with all the choreo and everything. Like, yeah, just fun. But at the same time, given how good they've only had one, and that was a while ago. But the Unnatural mini album release was, I was really looking forward to seeing more, right? And that's kind of what sucks. Like with some of the other subunit songs in history, they've actually played really big roles. Like Sistar wouldn't have been as big as they were without My Boy. If Sistar 19 had never been formed and My Boy had never come out, it's hard to say. Obviously, it's only speculation. But that song blew out of the water anything that Sistar had done up until that point, and it turned a lot of attention onto what the group would do as a whole afterwards.
Just for memory's sake, that's My Boy. Yeah. Right, My Boy. I know what song that is, okay? Yeah. I was trying to think in my head. I know what it is, okay?
Yeah. That was massive. Absolutely massive. So yeah, subunit songs absolutely like that are pretty iconic, in their own right. They have their own power, just like TTS did. I mean, like everyone knows Twinkle. Like Twinkle gets the same kind of coverage, to a lesser extent Holler as well, and Adrenaline as well. But like same kind of reverence as a lot of full group Girls' Generation songs, right? And I think with some units from bigger boy groups, especially SM ones like EXO, for example, I think by now how big CBX's catalog is. Like those three have put a lot of music out.
Lewis on the Lives has shown me like I think almost every EXO content of like subunit and actual group, and I still think I haven't gotten to like the full amount of releases. So it's crazy.
It was definitely a thing in the early days of Super Junior as well. There were so many units, obviously, because there were 15 of them total. but there was like Super Junior T, the trot unit, which I wish they would make another Super Junior T, because that was so much fun. There was Super Junior Happy. There was like, obviously there was the Korean and the Chinese groups and stuff. And then we have KRY, which is the main vocalist, and it's just like a ballad unit and stuff like that. And you have all these different, and it's cool because it means that the members can each do their own thing as well as doing the full group stuff and show their own colors and whatnot, which is kind of, especially how I think a group of that size, where some members might not get much time in the big group songs, have the opportunity to do them on their own anyway.
One of the subunits still goes for Super Junior for a long time, right? It's the God, is his name Dong Hyun or something? What am I blanking on? Donghae, yeah. His subunit that he has with the other Super Junior member,
with Eunhook, D&E.
They've been going, it feels like, for like forever, those two, because I've seen a lot of their like subunit stuff.
They just released another album, and I think they were celebrating their own unit's 10-year anniversary or something.
That's so how long their subunits longer than most like actual full groups.
Yeah, exactly.
That's insane.
And that even their style, I mean, they've done different styles between the two of them, but usually their style was very dance heavy, kind of more kind of club type vibes that we've seen. Again, it did cover different styles, but which is perhaps something that wasn't always explored in Suji's music as a whole. So they wanted to do more of that, so they formed a unit and did it, right? And there's also, I think that's where Donghae, who you mentioned, has produced some of their songs himself, which he hasn't done in their full group songs. And that's something perhaps as well, that units are a good opportunity to let members perhaps express themselves more creatively with more control over what they're doing than they would otherwise have, which is another neat thing that they can do.
Is the Girls' Generation Lil Touch, that's a subunit, right? Like the OGG, yeah, right? Is that a subunit? That's the greatest subunit ever made. I'm just throwing that out there right now.
So that one is trickier because that kind of exists in like a different technicality, because it's the members who remained at SM.
Yeah.
Right. So it doesn't include the 3 who had left the company. So obviously, because we haven't had a release of them all since they left, it's people are like, oh, this is the only thing that remains. And I mean, when we have, for example, the season's greetings, like we're having this year, so the 2021 season's greetings, just like the 2020 and the 2019 one, it's just those 5.
Yeah,
it's not all 8 of them. So it does kind of feel like it's not
so much a subunit as it is just them calling them that, because they're kind of hoping for like a 8 comeback at some point.
Well, because they still present themselves to be an 8-member group. But that's certainly that's another way in which units can happen. Sometimes if members have left at the end of a contract or whatever, and the others want to continue, then they're not going to continue under the exact same name. Maybe it's a mutual agreement, or maybe like a legal thing that they change the name one way or another.
One day we could have an episode where you explain the whole Jessica thing to me and Girls' Generation. The OT9 explanation or something.
Yeah, save that for the Scandals episode.
Scandals part 2.
Yeah.
Is there anything you feel we didn't? I don't know that there's anything we didn't really go into about subunits. I feel like there's always more, but you got to leave people wanting a little more too.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's more or less it, right? It's that's what they are and what we like about them, I guess, and what we don't like about them too.
Yeah.
I
guess kind of to conclude, what's your favorite subunit?
Oh, honestly, I'd have to say Orange Caramel. Because Orange Caramel is ultimately a subunit of After School, even though they became so successful that they kind of superseded After School in many ways. But yeah, I think Orange Caramel
Catalina is a dope song. The
Oh,
dun, 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 dun,
yeah,
dun,
yeah.
dun, dun. I always love that video of them doing the shouts live in the
Yeah.
beginning. She's like, and just screaming
Oh.
super loud.
I was so depressed the other day on Twitter seeing someone using that as an example of how female idols can't sing live,
Oh, bruh.
and like a whole bunch of a certain group's fans in the comments being like, "What the hell is this? Like, oh, this is so bad." And I'm just like, how do you not know what this is?
If you can't enjoy that
Children.
song, then there's something wrong with you. If you can't enjoy Catalina from Orange Caramel, that is just pure fun. Like,
Yeah.
I will conclude by saying that Irene and Solgi is the best subunit, and you can all fight me in the comments about it. But and now, if it had Joy in it, that's all I'm saying.
Well, maybe there'll be a Joy and Yuri subunit at some point. That would
Oh, there we go. We
perfect for both
get
of
our
us.
two favorites in there.
Yeah.
All right, well, that concludes topic 2. Topic 3, idols acting. And I want to start this one because I must say I have been watching Hotel de Luna, and I've seen IU act before in another one where she was a little creepy. She like had the guy take his heart out, and then she put him in a little like thing or whatever. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. That was a Netflix series as well. Persona, yes. So I already thought IU was a very good actress because of that when I had seen that. But yeah, I must say Hotel de Luna gives me some of the greatest visual like experiences I've ever had of like seeing IU and hearing Taeyeon sing in OST at the same time is like a heavenly out of body experience. Like, I don't know how else to describe that show except for Taeyeon's voice, IU's face, perfection as you're watching that show.
Yeah. So I guess that's. So IU, I don't want my voice cracked there. Maybe just how it is whenever I think about IU, my voice is just
going through puberty.
I ascend a few octaves. Yeah. She's always been considered a really good actress, ever since she was younger. I think the first time she started acting was in like 2012 or 2014 or something. And she was always pretty good. And by like 2016, she'd had pretty good roles and like had been winning awards and stuff. And I think, I mean, whatever she did was always going to be guaranteed success by that point. But she did prove herself as well. She proved that she was a very capable actress. And I think Persona is a good example for her because that was her really wanting to show that she was wanting to be taken seriously as an actress, not just a singer with a pretty face who you can put into a role and bank on her fan base giving it ratings. But I guess for the topic of idols acting as a whole, the question is that how many, or is it a case of there are being situations in which a drama will cast an idol over someone perhaps better for the role in order to try and attract the fan base, and the idols for proving really that they can't act as well. I mean, ultimately, all idols can act, right? Because acting is a fundamental part of being an idol. You have to be good at acting. That's how you show a presence on stage. That's how you embody a concept. That's how you be in a music video. You are acting. Right?
Yeah, they have a public persona that they give out as well. That is always acting, kind of.
Yeah. So obviously, all idols can act. But you can certainly see the difference between seasoned idol actors compared to new ones. And you can certainly see, I think, some cases where a pretty face is being hired over someone else. But Hotel de Luna is a good example, not just because of IU, but of course because there are two other idols in the main cast of that show. In Block B's P.O., who is the smiling, cheerful ghost doorman.
He's really good at that role, though. Like it's like embodying that character.
Because he's very much like that in real life, I think, which helps. And then of course Mina, formerly of IOI and formerly of Gugudan, who is the girl who bullied the other girl and then has her spirit
Oh,
her
I
body.
literally just saw that episode last night. So
Okay,
that was her. Okay, that's who that was. Okay.
yeah, girl with notably large ears. Um, yes, okay. Now I know where you're up to. I won't. I'll try not to spoil anything else. There's also on a more sad note, there is also a cameo from the late Sully in the show as well. I think you haven't quite reached that point yet, but
No,
she does pop up. Um, she's certainly an example of an idol who wanted to be taken very seriously as an actor, and I think for her, especially the type of person that she was, that was to her detriment in many ways in terms of how people perceived her, because she did like an experimental film in which there were some fairly graphic sex scenes by Korea's standards, and didn't that didn't help the perception of her in the eyes of the Korean public. Not because she wasn't good at acting, but because it was like, you're an idol, you shouldn't be doing this kind of thing. And that's kind of where I think a lot of films and dramas struggle, because if they cast an idol, they know that on the one hand they will attract part of that idol's fan base to the show, which is obviously a big factor in why they cast them in the first place. But then they know that the idol won't have the same kinds of parts, or they won't be able to show as much in terms of like being vulgar or sexual or whatever, because the fans won't respond to it as positively generally. So it kind of puts them in a weird space where idols are given very safe parts in a lot of shows, where it ends up kind of making the show as a whole suffer, because the idols aren't able to go as far as an actor, not a professional actor, would.
The
And
script
also they're not
changes
as talented.
kind of for them, right?
Yeah, not as talented, but not as well trained in that field. Like, obviously, a professional, experienced actor is just going to be better than an idol, right?
IU from I've watched a couple Korean dramas, and she's someone who kind of seamlessly, I don't think about this is IU the singer when I'm watching the acting or whatever. So I would say she does a really good job at just being an actor in a show versus thinking about this is an idol acting. I kind of haven't been thinking that while I'm watching it, like this is an idol acting, but I haven't watched that many Korean dramas. Is there like a case of like, oh, that was terrible or something of an idol's acting or something? Like, I'm curious, kind of. I would have to wonder about that.
Yeah, again, so I mean, I don't watch the hugest volume of K dramas ever, so I'm not necessarily at liberty to say. I know there have been some examples of actors being considered quite wooden and whatnot. Like Chan Woo, for example, the famous handsome face from Astro. Undoubtedly has gotten himself parts because of who he is, but doesn't necessarily earn them as an actor. I mean, I don't think he's bad, but I don't think he's necessarily as good as perhaps others.
I mean, when you look like that dude, come on, bro. He just walks in the room and someone's like, sold. You have the part, like...
But that kind of sucks, right?
Yeah, it does. So, but that dude's living a different life. that dude's on when you start an RPG up and you can put it to very easy or something mode on the
This is putting all your points into charisma right away.
Yeah. It's like,
and
not to say that he doesn't have his life struggles or anything. I'm just saying that he's got it a little easier, let's say, or something than someone else getting a role.
But you can kind of, I mean, not to just be going in on Unwoo for unnecessary reasons, but like he kind of embodies what the issue with idol acting is in general, right? That they're there because they're pretty and they have a fan base more than they are there because they have beaten everyone else who auditioned for that role because they were better. And in some cases it doesn't matter, because you see like smaller dramas or web dramas where it's like idol heavy and they're cast because of that. and it's fine. Like there was one that Yeri and Hong Sok from Pentagon just did recently, for example, where I don't think either of them necessarily swept everyone away for how good they were at acting, but just for what it was fine, right? It wasn't like they were sitting there being like, oh, I wish this person was Song Kang Ho or whoever instead, right? So in cases like that, I think it's fine, and for web dramas especially, I think that's where an idol should be,
like maybe a proving ground, really.
And then certainly you see idol actors getting better and better, and ultimately becoming quite successful and really starting to prove themselves. I think it becomes a thing to show an idol their first acting role, have them cringe at it, and then show them how far they've progressed, right? Like, for example, the Girls' Generation members who are acting like Sooyoung, Yuri, and Yuna, they've all come a really, really long way for what they were doing when they started off in terms of the dramas and films that they're acting now.
Run on Netflix, Sooyoung, I just started watching it and I didn't know she was in it, and like I was like pleasantly surprised. I was like, oh, like right. Sooyoung from Girls' Generation, you know, and then and then as I watched it, I forgot. I was like, oh, she's this character.
An actress.
Yeah, she's an actress.
Yeah. I mean, I guess with stuff like that, it helps obviously that we haven't known her as Sooyoung the idol for 4 years now. But yeah, so with Eunji from A-Pink, for example, she had some pretty cringy early roles. I mean, she was always solid in them, but just the nature of the roles themselves when they were like, oh, she's the girl next door, innocent like librarian girl type, whatever, and then like complete with like a horrifically awkward K-drama kiss where they just kind of stand there motionless with their lips touching for a few seconds. Just no movement, just there is no muscle movement, and that's whatsoever. It's like it's not even a kiss, it's just like a lip connection. And now she's doing this show where she's like smoking, and she's had like a lesbian kiss in it and stuff, and it's like she's now, you know, there's my type of improvement, right? There's no, I'm trying to think of what it was the just to go off those kissing scenes for a little bit. I've seen like good ones where it seemed natural, and then I've seen just absolutely atrocious chemistry in a kissing scene in some of the dramas. It's like where it's just like sit your faces on each other and just for 30 seconds that's it or whatever, and it's like have you has always been one of the hardest things for my suspension of disbelief to handle when it comes to watching a drama. But Koreans do not kiss in the same way that the West does, at least in that kind of situation. So there's an element of realism to it, but it's still kind of like, come on, get a wee bit of tongue in there. I guess in a Hollywood production or something, it's pretty over the top. I guess I imagine too, a lot of the time, like where it's just like whoa, you know, like just kisses you would. Right, like it's more realistic, I would say, just because as far as like, okay, they're making out with each other or something in a scene or whatever, and I can understand in a K-drama you can't just have like, particularly if it's an idol, they can't just be like, you know, getting overly sexual in a scene or whatever. It's got to be more like, okay, they touched lips kind of thing. Yeah, and that's kind of goes back to what I was saying before, that they kind of do get restricted in what producers feel like they can do, and perhaps even what a company might say that they can do. If they say, yeah, okay, you can cast our idol in this role, but here's a list of things that they can't do on camera, or whatever it might be, and even off camera, the stuff that a production team might have to deal with. For example, with the show that Jisoo is about to have come out, that's been in the works for forever and it's been delayed a bunch and stuff, and it's finally actually releasing, I can't imagine that must have been a really difficult thing for the producers to deal with. But obviously the pull of having someone like her in your show is gonna make up for it, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'll watch it. Just because Jisoo's in it, or I'll be like, oh, you know, like it does work. You know,
Yeah.
if you told me, oh, Taeyeon is in this upcoming drama, I wouldn't care what it's about or anything. I would just be like, okay, Taeyeon's in the drama, I'm gonna put it on or something. But I will say there was one on Netflix that has Joy in it, and I'm a massive Joy fanboy, but it just the type of drama was I couldn't, you know, like I just it was like very, very sappy romance. She's like a musician, she falls in love with another guy who's a musician as well, who's like a songwriter, and I tried, you know, like I did my best. I'm like, Joy, I'm your fan, like I'm gonna, and she wasn't bad acting or anything like that. It was just I can't, you know, like this is not my type of show, like by any means.
I mean that's just a K-drama thing in general, right?
Yeah.
Like there are some shows that just don't appeal.
Yeah,
I certainly always prefer the ones which have a more mature storyline to them, and I think that's why Hotel de Luna is so good, because it has such an interesting premise.
Yeah, it's been very, very great so far. The first couple
with
of
a lot
episodes
of
I've watched.
Almost like K-pop in a way that it goes through a lot of genres. Like it can go from being quite lighthearted to being quite serious it very quickly. And I think you'll the more you watch, I won't spoil any storylines, but the more you watch, the crazier storylines there will be. The more things will develop, and you'll be like, oh, we're doing this kind of plot now, and this is the vibe of this now.
IU just fits the type of character in Hotel de Luna so perfectly, like the type of the character that it is, you know. So there is certain cases like that where it's like, okay, maybe IU is casted because she's IU, but she definitely fits that role.
Yeah.
So I guess what we would worry about, right?
About that, she actually opened an Instagram account as Jangman Wall, as the character.
Oh, that's great.
And she posts, well, I don't know if she's still active on it, but she posted like a bunch like pictures of her in character on it and stuff, which is
she needs to permanently cosplay as that when she walks in that dress with the rifle and like shoots the sorry for anyone who hasn't seen the show, this was the trailer on Netflix as well, so not like spoiling anything. She walks in with like that rifle and shoots at the, I guess he was like what you would consider like a public official or something, but yeah, just that look. IU holding like a Winchester rifle for some reason. Maybe that's my inner America coming out of me. But yeah.
I know, it was hard.
No, yeah, it's just a dope scene. Yeah.
But so I guess speaking of like of Netflix popularity and stuff, we can talk about Squid Game, because there was a whole bunch of things that kind of went around when Squid Game was having its moment of people going, oh, which idols would have been good in this show? Like, who would you want to see? Which idols would you want to see in season 2? That kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I think, well, I mean, I did recognize a few people, a few actors and so on in the show, but I mean, obviously Lee Jung-jae is very famous. Ha Yeon-jung is famous, not necessarily as an actress, but as a model. I even recognize like a guy who played IU's manager in The Producers was the guy who got kicked to death by Dog Soo. But like, yeah, but I was quite glad that there weren't any idol faces in that, because it would have affected the suspension of disbelief. And I think now that the show was such a hit, depending on what the vibe of season 2 is, I feel like they might be more prone to casting known faces just for the sake of the, oh, so-and-so wants to have a cameo type thing, so let's have them have their cameo. Which is kind of a thing in K-dramas in general, that like known people start doing cameos in shows that are successful. Like Kim Soo-hyun, who's a very famous actor in his own right, he kind of has an in-joke on his own thing of like he constantly appears in cameos in other people's shows, just like for a one scene or whatever. And you have to think it would kind of be to the show's detriment if you saw a bunch of famous idols in there, especially even if they were just as the kind of the red shirts of the show who
Yeah.
like die very easily or whatever.
Something like Squid Games, especially just because of the type of show it is, would be weird to see an idol in. I feel like, but like you're saying, I've Ho Young Jung, right? That's how you say her name.
Yeah.
I've seen like the things because Jenny's her friend from Blackpink, so I've seen what you're talking about because I've seen people then be like, "Oh, put Jenny in season 2 or whatever." It's like, why do you want to see Jenny in Squid Games or whatever? It's kind of like, first of all, it's a very brutal show. So what exactly is it that you want to see Jenny playing death games? And like, I don't understand the like kind of the context of it too. Is strange.
Yeah, and then I guess the other the kind of aside from that is the is shows in which idols are playing idols, because that is a thing in its own right. There's a movie years ago called it's called like White Melody of Death or something like that, which I watched last year. I think it's early 2010s. It's a horror movie about a K-pop group that is there's like a curse and they get slowly killed off. I think they like there's some deal that's cursed in order for them to become successful. It's quite a cool like critique of the industry in a way. There's some idols in that, like members of After School are in that, but it worked better that the group wasn't made up of known idol faces. It was actresses instead, because then you can kind of supplant them and you can be like, this could be any idol, it not a known face. Whereas recently we've had we had the show Imitation, which had everyone from Jiyeon from Tiara to members from 80s to Minso, who did that like jazz K-pop song that you might remember, all in that. And it's like it's hard to separate who they are in reality to who they were on the show.
Well, especially when the group's so active now, like 80s, to separate that kind of idol persona to what their acting role is.
Yeah.
I imagine makes it more difficult. But yeah, like, so if someone's casted like IU fits a role so good for Hotel de Luna, that's like, okay, perfect. She fits that like type of role. But yeah, if it isn't the case of just like they don't particularly fit the role, but they're casted because, hey, like we're gonna get their whole fan base.
Yeah.
If we cast them, that's when it's kind of like iffy, like about if it's right or wrong, you know, kind of thing.
Yeah. So the one interesting one that's I watched the first episode of this Friday night. I think I was very drunk, so I don't remember too well. Which is Idol the Coup, it's called. And the storyline is about a group who are on the verge of disbandment, and they have a sudden chart reversal. It's basically a Brave Girls storyline drama, but obviously with more drama. So the 5-member group that's the main that you follow is played by Hani from EXID, XE from WJSN, Green from Red Square, an actress, and someone, and Solbin from Laboom, who I was blanking on for a second. So it's, which is fascinating because Hani and Solbin have both massively benefited in reality from a reversal type situation, right? EXID were very much on the verge of disbandment when Hani's fan cam went viral, and that kind of propelled them back up, right? The Boom recently signed a new contract with a different company, and they openly said that if it hadn't been for the sudden resurgence in popularity of Journey to Atlantis earlier this year, they would have disbanded. Because of that, they decided to keep going. And then you have XE, who's always been popular in her own right, and WJSN has always kind of had the same amount of, similar amounts of popularity throughout their career. I wouldn't say they ever had a huge high or a huge low. And then you have Green from Red Square, who have released one thing, haven't released anything since. She was in Good Day, the group that splintered into Red Square and Signature. So she's there going, I haven't had my moment yet. I haven't had anything.
Yeah.
So it's a weird thing, because obviously as well watching it, you're going, oh, that's Hanny, and that's Exy, and that's Solbin. But then the actress and Green, it's easier to picture they could be anyone type thing. Yeah. And in a way, you end up almost wanting the show to have the same kind of effect for Red Square based on that like hopefully they release something and it does well because of the nature of the show or something like that. And it's that kind of situation where I feel like that's really very good casting in a way, because they're the perfect kinds of people to be playing those roles for the most part. But then on the other hand, it's still very hard to watch it and not go, hey, it's Honey.
Yeah. Especially someone like Honey, it's so recognizable to everyone, like from EXID, obviously. But it works. I'm much more inclined to watch that show because I like Honey from EXID. You know what I mean? Like, right. It's a way that grabs people to watch something that they maybe wouldn't ever watch. Yeah. It's like, I'm a big fan. Oh, that's Honey from EXID. I want to watch that just because she's in it. Versus where if I watch the trailer, I don't know any of the actors and actresses in it, and I might just go past it, or something, So it is effective strategy to use. So like
like the storyline interests me, but I don't know the cast, so whatever type of thing. Yeah.
Which it's wrong. In a sense to think that way, because if the storyline interests you, you should just watch it. But it is compelling to be like, that's Honey from EXID, like it is compelling to watch it just because you really like who that is.
And that's kind of the same way that our brains work with the music as well, though, right? Like you should just listen to a song and give it a chance, right? But if you see that it's from a company with like 700 subscribers and their video has 200 views, you're probably going to be like, it's probably not very good. Like, I don't know who these people are. Like, whatever. I'll just, look, a new Itzy teaser. And then,
you have assumptions, right? Before you've even listened to it of the quality.
Yeah. And that's just, I think that's a natural reaction in some ways to make those kinds of presumptions. But yes, it's I think obviously when a drama is more of a commitment if you're going to finish the whole thing than listening to a song is. Obviously, you can stop a drama after 1 or 2 episodes if you want, but then there's always going to be that nagging feeling in the back of your mind of, what if it gets really good after the next episode type of thing.
Yeah, I guess to conclude, me and Oliver are not like criticizing that there shouldn't be idols in shows. I guess if anything, the only critique would be typecasting, like idols just because of what they'll bring from their popularity when maybe someone else would have been better at the role as an actor or actress. That's the only critique that there would really be of it. But I understand why they do it. It's certainly effective. Like Hotel de Luna, I didn't read what it was about. I watched the trailer thing on Netflix. IU walked in with a rifle, shot the guy. I was like, sold, and put it on. I was like, I don't need to know what this is about. IU's in it. I'm watching it. It's the same thing with Persona when it was like, oh, that's IU. I'm watching this. You know what I mean? Right. It's like, it's easy to sell someone that way.
Well, for me, I saw the poster for that when it was first announced, and I saw IU, and I was like, oh, another drama with IU in it. Because I haven't seen all of IU's dramas. I've always meant to watch. I love the producers. I always meant to watch My Mister, and I never watched it, for example. I never watched Scarlet Heart Rio either, because the historical ones can be pretty hit or miss for me. But like, that scene you've seen the scene of IU and Bacon like fighting in that show, right?
I have seen that.
And it's like, I can't imagine watching that and taking it seriously, even though it's meant to be lighthearted, but like, it's still just like, this is weird. It's just watching like 2 mega famous idols like play fighting, like, but
it is different because of who they are.
Yeah, but I saw it and I was like, oh, IU, and then I was like, oh, PO. I was like, oh, Mina, and I was like, okay, I'm in.
Right? The entire show is just full of super famous idols.
Yeah. So it definitely is. It definitely works, but I do think there. I mean, there are having fantastic dramas that I've watched which haven't had any idols in them at all, like Crash Landing on You and Squid Game too, I suppose, where I've been grateful in a way for the lack of famous faces in it. I don't know if you ever do this as well. If you're about to watch a Korean movie or show, if you go to like the Wikipedia and see who the cast is, I always find myself mousing over who the blue names just to see if anyone, if there are any idols in it, if they've been in other things or whatever, like that I can connect to in some way, just because that's my area of interest. But I don't think it necessarily sells something more or less based on whether or not an idol is in it.
Yeah,
anymore.
I do agree with you that Crash Landing on You, I really enjoyed that one as well. The one where she obviously crash lands in North Korea and meets he's like a high up officer in the North Korean military. I probably did enjoy that one a lot more because I didn't recognize anyone in the show. Had never, I don't think, seen any of. Obviously, I'm sure some of them are very famous actors and actresses, but me personally, I don't watch that much of that type of content. So like, I was absorbed in it because I didn't know anyone in the show. So I was like super absorbed into the characters that way. I could definitely see that being more broken if it's like, oh, that's a member from Twice or something shows up randomly in the show or something, like definitely breaks like the barrier you have of absorbing the content.
Yeah, you would definitely like the producers though, because that's very knowing of it. That's set in the office of KBS.
Oh, okay.
So it is so IU plays a singer who is like in a like bad situation with her company, and she's like very uppity and stuff. And then the plot line is basically obviously like a love triangle or whatever forms between her and one of the employees, who's played by Kim Si-hyun, who I mentioned. But it is jam packed full of cameos of different. I mean,
it like breaks the fourth wall during the show and stuff.
To sell you more, Taeyeon is in the first episode.
Oh, okay, I'm watching it then.
So
now I'm sold. What it's called, The Producers?
Yeah.
Okay.
But so it can be done really well, that kind of thing, because there you have IU playing not herself. She's playing a fictional character and playing it really well. And then alongside that, you have real idols and not just real idols, but real celebrities playing themselves, either seriously or very fictionalized versions of themselves. Like JYP is in it, playing like a huge douchebag version of himself, and it was just really funny. Like, so, and he's done that before as well. Like, I mean, JYP loves to turn up.
Yeah.
The Wonder Girls movie, but
oh god, I'm never watching that.
And Dream High as well. But yeah, so it can be done really well, but I don't agree with the idea of forcing idols into things, and I don't agree with the way that necessarily people seem to always want idols to end up in things when actually there's a huge pool of very talented actors who are often better suited.
Yeah. I think that concludes it perfectly. I think that's exactly sums up the feelings on the topic. Feel free to shout at me and Oliver about how we're wrong and Jenny should be in season 2 of Squid Games. But that has I guess this was topic 3. IU is a goddess. It was more me and Oliver fawning over how amazing IU is. But yeah, this has been Kpop Podcast episode 6. Thank you guys who have been watching continually and sticking with us. Some of you have said some very nice things in the comments about it. We do appreciate it. We love you guys. So this has been there. I finally did the chew thing properly. I finally did it properly. All right.
Nice.
Bye, everybody.